Ah, these calls have done my head. Uh, try to wrap this up. Try to wrap this up.
Uh, I think it dropped for a sec. Sorry
Yeah,
about
no, no,
that.
no. The live just closed. It lives have a time limit. Okay,
Okay. Well,
just to wrap up what I was trying to say earlier is like
sure. Yes.
I think people are obsessed. I'm people are generally obsessed with like how the 1% want to date, and I just don't understand the obsession. I find it cringe. It's like that's it. That's the real reality of it. That's the reality. I see people saying like, "I want a 6 7," and like, it's very common. I hear this stuff and I find it so cringe. I'm like, just by the numbers, it's just not likely. So,
Mhm.
I think that's like the general feeling I have towards this whole topic.
Yeah, okay, so to kind of steer the conversation in a direction that I actually care about a lot more fundamentally, and why I'm fascinated by that topic is you think, I know you guys think that men don't have a lot of good role models, but I also think that modern women don't at all, which is why we're being pulled in so many different directions. On one hand, people are telling us, you know, go get your career, be independent, get all your shit together. On the other hand, it's like, go find yourself a husband, don't even give a shit about school, don't get into debt, just find a man to take care of you. And then there's a myriad of things in the center that pulls what I'm supposed to be as a woman in so many different directions. So
So,
that's why I have a fascination with this topic, because it's another view on what women should aspire towards.
I mean, at the end of the day, you should aspire to whatever you want. Just reality, the only thing that matters is that you understand how these choices have consequences on your wants and desires. It's very difficult to have a high level career and also have a balanced lifestyle in terms of family and friends. It's just understanding those consequences. And I think since women have generally, for most of the time, taken care of a lot of the extra labor in regards to the household management and stuff like that, there's an extra set of stress that comes with them having that because we see that there's still an uneven distribution of household chores, even when women are married to men who make less or whatever. So it's just understanding how these choices can negatively impact your wants and desires, and that's it. And is it confusing? Yes. Is it conflicting? Of course. Life is very rarely a binary where it's like you choose this, you get this, you choose this. It's like no, it's very difficult, and we want a mixture of all things. So um, just understand that, understand how it might affect you, understand how it might implicate your choices, and then with that, move forward. As far as like role models for ladies and role models for dudes, um, if you say ladies don't have role models, then I'll just take your word for it. I mean, I won't disagree. I don't know, so
Yeah,
I'll
there
believe you.
really aren't many good ones. But anyways,
Yeah,
that's an interesting point.
yeah,
Basically, there's no easy answer.
yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
I, hey, if you say that, I don't know. I'm gonna go to Shanice because she was waiting since earlier, and then I'll bring you back on. All right, go ahead, Shanice.
Okay. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, my disagreement's from a video that's from a while ago, which is love's overrated.
The word, yes, the word, yes.
And so, I just don't think it's overrated. I think that it's overused. I think that a lot of people use love very willy nilly and just don't care about like what it actually means. But I don't think it's necessarily overrated. And I agree with you and Preach kind of were saying that love is not this constant emotion. Like you're not gonna always be in love with the person or like always be necessarily like happy to see them 24/7, if that makes sense. Like you can love
Yeah, I don't, I don't,
someone.
I don't think we necessarily said that, but yeah, I get probably said the part about you're not always going to be happy to see them. Sure, okay.
Yeah.
Listen, overrated just means too highly valued. I think it is. I think especially in the context of relationships, I think people bring it up far too much, not recognizing that there's a lot of other aspects that lead to people divorcing and lead to people not being together. So I don't think. I think love is like seeing this as all-encompassing force that can bring people together and make it work. When in reality, it's not that at all. So I think that's where we severely disagree. Plenty of people are always in love and then still get divorced. There's a lot of aspects other than love that keep people together and keep people apart. So for me, I think it's overvalued, and it's like one of the things that people talk about the most when it comes to dating. So yeah, I think it's overrated. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You disagree with that notion?
I mean, to an extent, like, I think that it's not actually as valued, but I think that's in part because there's so often these conversations of finding people who can, I guess, bring something to the table, whether that's finances or like helping you with your current situation, which I understand that. But I think that, I don't know, it's just, to me, that's kind of stupid to an extent, because I rather be with someone who's broke, but I'm happy to be around them well, not all the time, obviously, but I'm happy to have them in my life.
Do you
Like,
think?
I don't,
Do you think people? Do you think that people need to be in love to have a good marriage?
I think there has to be some level of love, but it doesn't have to be like, almost like there has to be some type of bond there. I feel like love
Sure.
isn't
Okay.
necessarily the word.
So
Yeah.
you're making my point for me. You're very much saying it's overrated. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying, hey, cool. But we just sit here and act like this. Like, at least my time since living in North America has been like, it's everywhere. They value Valentine's Day, and when they talk about relationships, like, do you love him, and all this other stuff. It's like, there's so many other things to talk about that are, in my opinion, just as important, if not more. And I just feel like the conversation's always about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. That's all. That's just my main point. But listen, I appreciate you calling on. Thank you for a disagreement. And yeah, that's it. Cheers. But hey, listen, she disagrees and I'm mad. Yes, all right, go ahead.
Right.
What did you want to say?
Um, so it's not necessarily a disagreement, just like an addition to something you guys were talking about in the video. Um, there was that one where you were like on a podcast or something, and you were talking about marriage and Westerners with like a bunch of girls and you. Um, and you were saying how like in Western or like North American culture, how like marriages don't last, but if you look at other cultures or other parts of the world, like they stay together, and you part of your explanation for that was that people in those other cultures, like, they value community and like working hard and working through things and all that, which is
No,
all
I
true.
mean, I said it's joining of families, which means the implications of divorce are far more
Right,
severe. And
right.
it's frowned upon.
So I don't think that's like the full picture. I think part of it also has to do with the fact that in those cultures, like, you just straight up you can't get divorced even if you want to, either because legally it's not an option, religiously it's not an option, or just like the huge social stigma that you're gonna face, or you might stay married, like you mentioned, South Asian communities, like, they stay married because they have no choice. They stay in their same house and living together and they're married, but they live separate lives. So I don't know if just looking at different cultures and communities and seeing how they stay together, if that's a completely accurate measure or an accurate way to compare the Western or North American lifestyle or marriage, because it's not just about individual people and their attitudes that causes them to stay together or to get divorced. It's also because of the community and the legal system, the religious system, that kind of forces them to be together. It doesn't mean because they have a better
I agree.
work ethic.
I agree. And I think that's why when people say till death do us part,
Mhm.
Habibi, you might want to know what that means before you
Yeah,
make
yeah.
that choice.
Yeah, so that
So
wasn't a disagreement. It
I
was just
prefer
like
to
an
value,
additional comment.
I would prefer to value a set of values where people live by the words that they say. That's
Right.
all. So at the end of the day, if you're not willing to make that commitment, don't get married. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I agree with
There's no
everything that you
asterisk in
said.
there that says, hey, if he's not neglecting you, you know what I mean?
Right,
So,
right.
and here's another aspect. I think when it comes to the binary, there are both ends of the spectrum you can say have bad aspects to it, right? I would
Right.
agree with you that having forced to be staying in something that's clearly, for example, abusive or
Mhm.
be terrible or whatever.
Mhm.
Sometimes not even physically. Sometimes you could just be neglected to the point where it's terrible. Okay,
Right.
I would agree with you. It's not a good thing. I always look at this stuff from a more societal standpoint. I
Right.
think, and I said this in a previous video, but it's just when we don't have families, when we don't have people who stay married, when we don't have these things, what ends up happening very fast, you see it everywhere, is the birth rate plummets.
Mhm.
So it's bad for
Yeah, no, I
society.
agree. Yeah, I agree with
So for me,
everything
if
that
I
you're
had to
saying
pick
now and
between
what
the
you
two
said then.
systems, if I had to pick between the two systems, there's one that prioritizes the individuals and their wants and
Right.
needs, and there's one that prioritizes communities.
Community. Right. Right.
Okay, and if you
Yeah.
were to ask me which one was better, even though
Mhm.
I agree that one still makes individuals suffer, and that's a
Mhm.
real thing, I would
Mhm.
argue that this system is better than this one. What would you say?
Um, I don't know if any is better than the other. I think ideally it would be somewhere in between. I know that's not the reality. Um, yeah, I don't know if it's fair that individuals should have to suffer for the sake of community. I don't know if it's fair that the community should have to suffer for the sake of the individuals. I don't know what the
But
right
but but,
answer
but
is.
that's what they're doing. You look at like somewhere like Japan where they have a negative birth rate, and they're
Mhm.
dying faster than
Mhm.
being born.
Mhm.
That's how societies die out.
Right. But I mean, in Japan, they have other factors going on that are contributing
I mean, no,
to
no.
that. It's not.
Hey, 100%. They're just not
Mhm.
having kids.
Right.
Here's the thing: if you're by yourself, the odds of you having kids are far less likely than
Oh
if you
yeah.
were someone.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right. So at the end of the day, these things are very real. They have an impact
Yeah,
on
yeah,
us
yeah.
as a global community. So for me, I think that's just how I look at it from a more global standard. Now,
Mhm.
on the individual, you can make the argument that having the option to get out is better. But I also argue the flip side is also true, that sometimes having to persevere to something you don't want to necessarily do also
Mhm.
is good for you guys. So there's both ends of that spectrum, but I just think about it as a holistic standpoint. But
Mhm.
if you were to make the argument that some people can't leave and it's terrible, I agree with you.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like I said, I agree with you too. That was just like an additional comment on top of what you guys already said.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, cool. Thanks. Bye.
Yes. All right. Oh, yeah. Just ideas. Just ideas. Somebody gonna come in here and start talking about buttholes? Too bad I lost that. If anybody recorded that, if anybody recorded the portion where they're talking about buttholes and staring at them, by all means, send that to me. All right, sir. Go
Hi.
ahead. Yes, sir.
So